What's up everybody, welcome back. So we're going to continue our inventory system and make sure that the player inventory will save and load. So right now if we pick up an object or drop it into the world, that will save on our world save game, and we're going to make sure that the player inventory saves as well. So if I pick up something and close the game and come back the next time, it will still be there. Then in the next episode we're going to start working on some widgets so we can actually see what's happening inside of the inventory as well. So yeah, that's what's up for the next videos. If you like the series, please consider leaving a like, or you can join the Game Dev Raw Discord and tell me you like the series. You can also become a member on the YouTube channel or check out my Ko-fi page if you want to make a small donation. So with that out of the way, let's start today's video. So first of all, we are going to create a new save game. So for the players, we're going to save the inventory locally, and for the game world that actually saves on the server. So let's go to the save data folder, and I'm going to create a new blueprint class and look for SaveGame. So let's call this SaveGame player profile or player inventory. That's better probably. And let's open it up, and we only read one array in here, so let's add a variable, and that's the player inventory, and that's going to be an array of our inventory contents. So inventory content structure, and turn it into an array. So that's the entire save game, so we can close that one down. And now we actually need to create a controller, because we want to set up some custom stuff in our player controller. So right click, create a new blueprint, and create a player controller. So let's call it something like a third person controller. Now first of all, we need to make sure that we actually use this one. So we're going to open our third person game mode, and in the class defaults we need to assign the player controller class. So right now it's player controller, and make it the custom player controller that you just created. Then we can close this one down. And first of all, let's open our third person character, because we want to make a small custom event in here. So let's go to the event graph, and in here I'm going to create an event called a server load inventory from SaveGame. So let's create a custom event. Server load inventory from SaveGame. No. And this is going to be replicated to run on server. And then we are going to set our player inventory. So drag in a setter for the player inventory and simply drop it on top of the event. So we can call this from our local player controller. That is going to load it from the save game, and then this will store it on our character, and it will replicate to all the instances of our character as well. So that should be good to go. Okay, this is not working, so let's disconnect it, remove this, and create it manually. So that's our player inventory. And that's our inventory contents array. Okay, that's better. So with this setup, we can go into our new player controller and set up some stuff in here. So let's go to the event graph. And for the player controller, first of all, let me grab my notes quickly. So we're going to store some stuff on possessed. So let's grab our event possess. And this will only execute on the server. So we're going to grab our possessed pawn and cast it to our character. So that's our third person character. And we're going to promote this to a variable. And we're going to make sure that this variable replicates. So because the server sets it, then the local player controller also knows the controlled pawn. Then we're going to create event begin play. So let's drag that one up here as well. And for begin play, first of all, we're going to grab a branch. So this one executes on all instances of my character. And this is a controller, so it executes on the local instance and on the server. So we're only interested in the local controller. So we want to know if this is a local player controller. And if this is true, then we also want to know if we are the server or not. So let's grab another branch. So if we are local, that doesn't actually mean anything about our server or client. So we are going to check if we are the server or not. And if we are the local controller for the server, then we're going to load a SaveGame. So we're going to make a new variable and we're going to call that our inventory slot name. And that's a name variable. And then drag it in as a setter. And for the server, I'm going to set it to player inventory slot and then 0. And then I'm going to load a game from slot. So let's load, we need to create a function for that, I'm sorry. So what I'm going to do is create a new inventory slot for each player. So we can test in Pi with different save games and we actually can see that every player has a different inventory. So we need to do a little setup for that. And actually this doesn't need to be a name, but this needs to be a string. Oh, really? And then we're going to drag it in and set it to the inventory slot 0. So I know I just called it player inventory slot, but that doesn't really matter. So now let's create the function I was talking about, and that's called load inventory save game. So let's create a new function and call it load inventory save game. And this one needs, it doesn't need an input, by the way. We're just gonna check if a save game exists. I'm sorry, does save game exist? And we can plug in our inventory slot name. Then we're gonna grab a branch. So if it does exist, we can simply load it. So we're gonna load a game from slot. And again, we're gonna plug in our inventory slot name. And because it doesn't know what's it loading, we need to cast it. So let's cast to our save game player inventory. And then we can store that as a variable. So drag over here, promote to variable, and that's good to go. So we're only going to store this locally because in the end we're only able to save it locally as well. So there's no need to replicate this. Then we can return from here. And if the branch is false, then we need to create a save game. So drag off here, create save game object. And we want to create our save game player inventory. So this time we don't need to cast it because we told it what's it going to create. So we can simply set it over here. And then we do need to make sure that we save it in our correct slot. So the next time it will actually be recognized. So that's gonna drag off here again, and we're going to save game to slot. And then we need to plug in our slot name again, and that should be good to go. So with this function set up, we can go in the event graph and load our inventory save game. And then I think there's only one thing we need to do, and that's grab our third person character reference. And from here we're gonna tell it to store the save game on the player character. So we're gonna call the function server load inventory from save game, plug it in here, and then we can simply get the inventory contents from our save game. So drag in the save game object and get inventory, and we can plug it in over here. So that will actually load the inventory from the save game and store it on my character. So with that out of the way, we need to set up some things in the third person character to actually save it when we pick up or remove something. Okay, before we dive into the character, we need to create one more custom event on the player controller, and we need to be able to call that event from the character if we want to store our inventory on the save game. So let's create a custom event in our event graph on the player controller. And we're going to call this save inventory to save game. Save inventory to save game. And we're gonna need a player inventory as an input in here. So let's just create it. Player inventory. And that's the inventory content structure. Turn it into array. So then we can simply grab our SaveGame reference and we can drag off here and set our inventory. So we're not storing the inventory on the actual player controller, we're only keeping a reference of the SaveGame. So let's just plug it in directly over here. And then all we need to do is save game to slot. So save the game to slot, and we need to plug in our slot name from the variable. That should be good. The only thing left here is make sure that this event is set to replicate to run on the owning client. And let's make it reliable because we're actually saving something, so that's pretty important. Now with this event in place, we can go back to our character and make some small changes in here to make sure everything works. So first of all, let's go to our event possessed, and right now we're storing our game mode. And I also want to make sure that we store our controller. So let's drag off the new controller and we're going to cast it to our third person controller that we just created. And we're going to promote this to a variable. So drag off here, promote it. That's fine. Let's make sure that this is replicated as well. So replication, replicated. Event possessed on server, this is replicated, so all of my character instances will know my controller. Then we can create a new event in here as well, and we're going to call that save current inventory. So create a custom event, save current inventory. And this event is going to call the event on the controller. So we're going to drag in our third person controller and we're going to save our inventory to SaveGame. Plug this in and we can simply plug in our inventory from the variables over here. So this is an event we can call after we updated everything, and this will make sure that it saves. So we do not need to replicate this event because this one is already replicated to the owning client, and we're going to make sure that this is called by the server. So with this in place, we're going to open our add item to inventory event, and this is called whenever we add something to our player inventory. So we can simply go to the end of the event and we can call our save current inventory, and that will make sure that everything saves in the correct place. So save current inventory and plug it in right before the return node, and that should be good to go. And then we can do the same thing with the remove item from inventory. So let's open that one up as well, and right at the end, so let me see, this is a for each loop. So this is what you get when you don't add return nodes. So this should be over here in the for each loop with the item info. And then from this for each loop, so that's the first one in the function, we want to drag off and we want to save our current inventory. And this time let's add a return node so we don't have to look for it next time. And that's good to go as well. So now we're going to go back into our third person controller to make sure that the clients also have a save slot available, and then we should be able to test this. So let's go back into the third person controller, and right now we only assign the save slot to the server in the begin play for the local server controller. So we're going to simply add keyboard events for the clients so they can press either key 1, 2 or 3 to select a different save slot. So let's add keyboard events for key 1 and for 2 and 3 as well. So this is the easiest way to set up testing like this, and because in an actual game you don't really need to do this because every player has its own local save game. So there's not really need to make a whole complicated logic for this. We're just going to use keyboard inputs and that should work fine. So if this is pressed, first thing I'm going to do is add a branch and check if we are the server. So if we are not the server, then we can do something. If we are the server, we know we already have a save game, and I don't want to mess with that. So in this way, we can only mess up the client save games by pressing the wrong buttons, but at least the server save game is always safe. And this is an input event, so this will always be a local event. And if we are not the server, but we are local, then we are one of the other clients that needs a save game. So we're going to continue from the false pin, and the first thing we're going to do is set our inventory slot name, and then we're going to load the inventory save game, and after that we're going to save it on our character. So we can simply copy these last 3 nodes, paste them over here, and all I'm going to do is change the number. So for number 1 we're going to use save slot number 1, and then I'm going to add a little print at the end, so at least I know everything is stored correctly. So save slot index 1 selected, and now we can do the same thing for the other 3 and make sure that we adjust the numbers. So we have save slot number 2, and let's change the print over here, and then save slot number 3. So now all we need to do is make sure that at the beginning of a game, if we are a client, we press either 1, 2 or 3 to select our correct save slot. Right now there's nothing really to remind us to that, but in the next episode when we are creating a HUD, we're going to add a little hint so you won't forget as easily. So right now we should be able to test, so let's launch a game and see what happens. So before we start testing, I removed the save games from the SaveGame folder. So after we made changes like this, it's probably smart to just get rid of them, and that way you know you start with a clean sheet and everything should work. So let's launch a 2-player game, and right now it's storing all of the data to this save game, so that should be fine. So I'm a client, I need to select the save slot before I do anything, so press the 1 key on my keyboard, and the print confirms that I now have a save slot selected. So let's pick up this orb over here, and that contains 2 orbs, so that should be good. And we're going to pick up this fan over here, and that contains 2 fans, so that should also be good. Then let's go to the server side, and let's make sure that we also pick up something with the server. So let's pick up this orb over here. And now the server should have 2 orbs in the inventory. So now let's close down the game and let's load it again. So the server is loading contents, that should be fine. The world contents still look like they are okay. So with the client first I need to select my save slot, so I'm going to press the 1 key. And now I should be able to drop some items. So I got 2 orbs in my inventory, and then I got 2 fans in my inventory. And right now there's nothing left because nothing gets dropped. So that actually seems to work. And let's see if the server also has 2 orbs. So I can drop 2 orbs, and now there's nothing left in my inventory again. So let's pick up 2 dishes with the server, and now we're going to close the game. So we have 4 orbs over here, 3 fans, and we have a dish in the back. And the server should have 2 dishes in the inventory. So to confirm everything is saving and loading, let's do it one final time. So we have the map over here, 4 orbs, 3 fans and a dish right in the back. And right now if I go to the server, I should have 2 dishes in my inventory, and I do. So everything seems to save and load properly, and we have our save games set up and good to go. In the next episode, as I mentioned, we're going to add a HUD and we're going to add an inventory widget so we can actually see what's happening as well. So if you like the series, please consider leaving a like, and I'll be back soon for more. Thanks for watching guys, talk to you later.